Jerry Kahn. So welcome to It Takes an Audience-Driven, Authentic Presentation to Win the Deal. Our focus on giving you really strategic, um, strategic and tactical techniques for you to be able to produce better presentations and win more deals. And that's really our goal. Our agenda is really very simple. We're going to focus on going over some of the common presentation challenges we run into. As I said, we've serviced over 5,000 people. Most of our clients tend to be people raising money, investors, private equity, VCs, mergers and acquisitions, but we work with a lot of CEOs on their board presentations, a lot of Fortune 100 companies, etc. So I'm just going to arrange them to view because we also work with independents who are trying to knock off giant companies, and some of our greatest successes being able to do that. We're then going to give you a simple formula called ADAP. And after, I don't know how many years, we finally built this based on a story that actually someone shared. There was once a Jewish teacher. His name was Hillel. He was confronted by someone who was a little skeptical about what the Bible was. And he said, tells me everything I need to know about the Bible while standing on one foot. Thought about it a second. He said, don't do to other people what you don't want them to do to you. That's really what the Bible is. The rest is commentary. Now, are you ready to learn? And the person did and became another great scholar. And so we try to say, how do I take all this information I share with everybody about presentations and get it to two simple concepts, ADAP, and that's what it's about. And then we're going to go through some of them, actually, which we call the 5 S's of presentation excellence. So let's begin. Many of you, I've looked at the list of people. We have a lot of people attending, come from a variety of different backgrounds. You're HR, you're talking to employees. At the end of this year, you're going to talk about the great year I hope you all had. You're going to talk about benefits beginning for next year, how to choose the kind of plans you're looking for, your management, how do you align the managers, how do you get them to decide on next year's strategic directions, investors, why should they continue to invest in your company, or if they haven't yet, why should they selling them, how do you get them to join as customers, and what's really in their interest, existing clients, how do you expand their capabilities, strategic allies. Today it takes a team to really succeed, and boards and key committees. Last year we did a special program just on boards and key committees because most people think the kind of presentations you do for the other groups applies to them, and the answer is no. They need a different level of presentations. We've been super successful with Fortune 100 companies designing these slightly different presentations for the boards, and they work successfully. The key in all cases is really very simple, and if you keep your eye on what you're trying to do, you'll always achieve it, and that is to facilitate decision making. People don't want to just hear information. We're too busy. We don't have the time for that. What they want to be able to do is make a decision. So I don't like the concept of informing, but I do like the idea of educating, because that's sometimes what we have to do. We want to inspire or motivate people. We want to engage them into something, and if they're not energized, activate them to do so. We're always, whether it's a real product or service or an idea, we're always selling something. And we need to understand that and the psychology behind it. That's what my PhD is in, psychology. How do you build a presenter's brand? Remember, we don't just buy the company and the product or service, we buy the presenter. How do you present that brand? And ultimately let you go away with the leaders present, because that's how they're going to follow you in the future. So what we've discovered is for most presenters over all these years are two major challenges. The first is people prefer not to present. A lot of people are introverts. They're shy. They're afraid. Many, many years ago, a book came out called I'd Rather Die Than Give a Speech. And in it, when I first thought of that, I thought, wow, I'm out of business. I better go find another profession. But I did the reading, as I usually do, and I discovered, wow, people would rather do anything, including have cavities filled, but they don't really want to die, but they'd rather do anything extra. And the question really was, why is it they don't? And that's what we're going to get to with our presentation, how to make you feel more comfortable. But the key thing I want you to walk away with today is understanding if you are nervous, you are one out of the 99.9% who are. So don't worry about it. It isn't an issue. Everyone's like that. And if people see you being a little nervous, they're going to actually have more empathy for you. So don't worry about it. The second part is that most presentations aren't engaging, and that's a real problem. As one person always said, I hate sitting in presentations. They're so boring. I don't want to do that to anyone else. Well, Wall Street Journal covered a study that found that over 84% of all presentations were rated as boring or putting them to sleep. Nobody really wants to do that. Unfortunately, only 3% are stimulating. We like to think that almost all of them are the ones who came from presentation excellence, but there are a lot of them who are doing it on their own. So let me just give you a simple formula. Standing on one foot. How do you understand how to do it? Keep in mind two things. It has to be audience driven and it has to be authentic. Leave any one of those two out and it will not succeed. Audience driven means you're not focusing on yourself. You're focusing on the audience. What do they need to know? How do they need to take that information in? What is the context in which they're coming? Have they heard this before or not? Do they see you as credible or not? There's a million variables that go in, but you need to make sure that when you've understood all of your audience's needs, you will be for them compelling in terms of your presentation, engaging so they want to learn more, and resonating with their value system about the media and about the message and about the presentation itself, the channel. The second part of that makes it such a powerful approach is to understand that once you start focusing on your audience, it's no longer about you. And if you ask most people why they're nervous, because they're afraid of making a mistake. They're afraid of saying something wrong. They're afraid of leaving something out. Notice the key thing. They're afraid of themselves. So it's about you is why people are having so much trouble. So instead of making it I-driven, or me-driven, make it audience-driven. Really focus on the audience. Barbra Streisand's a wonderful entertainer. We all know that. She says to this day, a couple years ago, she appeared in the Barclays Center, and she said, as she said many times before, I am always nervous when I present. So you see, nobody gets over that. And it takes me about 10, 15 seconds before I'm not. But here's the key. Once I get into there and I look at the people and I get into their eyes and they see their body language, I forget about me and I'm focusing on them. In other words, she's audience driven. The second part is it has to be an authentic presentation. It really has to resonate with what people want and want to deliver and want to say as a message. It's really important because what happens is very often people have other people doing your presentations and then it's not you. And when you deliver someone else's presentation, you never have that energy, that passion, because it's not authentic. Most of you do your own presentations. That's our experience today, or at least the most of them. And the key thing to understand is if you know your material, then you're confident. That makes you feel more relaxed and gives you confidence. If you're passionate about the message, then what you can do is transfer that enthusiasm, and that's called selling. Brian Kelly used to say this all the time. Selling is the transfer of enthusiasm. The key part to understand is that if you use someone else's template or you're using a setting where you're not comfortable, that's going to hold it. That's going to hold you back. And the net result is the energy that should be in developing what we'll call a cathexis, a relationship between you and your audience about that message is lost because you're focusing on trying to overcome. It's kind of making sure I don't stumble instead of working on how fast can I walk and run. These are three great presenters, but they're great leaders also because everything they do is authentic. So it really has to be you. And really, if you have someone else who's producing your presentations, it can be a problem. I had a CEO of a very, very large company, $7 billion company, used to run a $2.5 billion division of a much larger company, took it over, and after 18 years of being a super leader, called me up using a Yahoo email just to get started because he didn't want people to know he was going through this. He says, I don't know, something's wrong with the way I'm presenting. I've lost it entirely. And we listened to him, and he was a great speaker, but when he did his presentation, all the energy was gone. And finally I said to him, you didn't design this, did you? And he goes, no, we have a communications department that does it. I said, how'd you always present in the past? I did it myself. I said, that's the answer. It's their presentation, not yours, and your psychology is telling you that. He made the change. Companies have been up about 25% the stock price ever since that change took place, and he's constantly telling me how great it is. So, if you're authentic, if you're audience driven, now you're ready to rock and roll for presenting. And these are the 5 things you need to know. What is the substance? What's important now? In today's day and age, there's so much we want to talk about, but much of it is distractive clutter. And that takes you down. So we have to get rid of that. Second is structure. Remember, the goal is to facilitate decision making. How does it guide the buyer to act? The third is it engaging? If it isn't engaging, people tune off. I sit in so many presentations where people come up and the first slide is so busy with text and so hard to read that within literally 3 to 4 seconds, I watch the eyes go from, oh my God, I can't see that, to looking down at their presentation if they have it in front of them, finish it fast so they can get out, or quickly taking out their mobile devices. If that's what you want people to do, that's fine, but that's not an authentic presentation. And finally, speaking. How do you control what you say and how you say it to make a difference? And setting. How does it impact it? We'll talk about the role of setting. So I'm going to focus on 5 key issues. The concept of focus, why it's so important. That less is really more. We're going to talk about how you leverage graphics and visual metaphors. We're going to talk about how to organize for impact. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. This is a very long presentation. And when I do my workshops and I do my larger webinars, I spend much more of the time. So I'm just going to go through that part of it quickly, but to give you a taste of it. And finally, some really good tactical tips on how to deliver a winning presentation. So start with the beginning of this presentation. And the concept here is, how do you focus? Well, you have to do that by answering a question. What's the goal? This is a great graphics. In fact, these are 2 of my favorite slides. This is one of them. If this archer tries to achieve 2 of these goals, because we're all multitasking all the time. Oh, I'm going to try to motivate this person and persuade them. Where does the arrow go? The arrow goes right in between both targets. And therefore you miss everything. The only way you get a bullseye is to focus on one and only one goal. So understand, in a presentation, there is one and only one main goal, and that's what you want to focus on. Second part of focus is recognize within a large presentation, there are different sections within the theme. And what you need to do is take those themes and break them up. So if I'm doing, for example, an investor presentation, I know I may have only 20 minutes to present. That would be a typical conference presentation. They give you 30 minutes. You really never start on time. You have to finish early and take Q&A. So all my clients focus on doing it in 20 minutes. You do an overview of the company in literally a minute, no more. Just quick, this is what we're doing. So if we're investing in a brand new technology that's going to allow Airbus to just apply for a patent on it, take people from Europe to America in literally 1 hour. It's going to be available, in 5 to 10 years from now, but we want to talk about it. If you're sitting there and you go, wait a minute, I wanted to invest in biotech and I'm not looking for a future, you're in the wrong place. You can leave right away. If it's right, you continue. Talk to me about the product line, what it is, what makes it special, why is it something that people would really want, how do you differ from your competitors, and who are the people who use you is the next thing I need to know. Who's my customers? Because if I'm going to grow that business, I need to know my customers inside and out and how they're going to choose me over potential competitors and current competitors. So I have to deal with both of them so people really get how they see it. And then I talk about my strategy for the future. The competitive advantage, and I'm going to talk about that a lot. We'll do our 9th webinar is focusing on something we call a commanding strategy, which is a sustainable competitive advantage that smart companies like Apple have been building into their system. That's where it is. Investors, remember, don't buy on what you did before. They do on what you're going to do in the future. I was reading today that Netflix stock is selling 543 future earnings ratio. I mean, that's an incredible thing. Most companies are somewhere between 10 and 12, let's assume. So it's your strategy for the future. How clear is it? How well is it understandable? Are you really organized to do it? And finally, can you actually perform on that? And so management team, what are your skills that are going to allow you to reach the financial performance, which are your benchmarks, which you're saying, especially in investor presentation, judge me by. 5 different sections. I introduce each one so you know what it is, and I can answer your questions for you accordingly. From there, I have to go into each section, and I have to figure out how to present that information. And the key focus here, the third part, is one idea per image. What many people do, especially people who have been presenting for 20, 30, 40 years, they try to put a lot of things on a slide. Mistake. It doesn't cost more to produce a slide because remember, it's just an image. You're not going out and producing, 35 millimeter slides as I first did in the first years that I learned how to do this stuff. Just keep it to 1 point per image. Present your case. Keep in mind how the audience is thinking about it so that you can make sure that he gets your unique sales proposition, what makes you special and different and gives you a competitive advantage over anyone else. And if you know you're competing with other people, use something we call counterpunching. In other words, anticipate what your competitor might say and inoculate them by setting it up so when they say it, they sound stupid and ineffective, and you come across as the winner. In other words, use your competitor's argument by inoculating your client to make sure that you win, not they. The same goes not just for the text and the message, but for statistics. If you have a chart, the one on the left is an example of things I see all the time. Oh, I'm going to combine sales and profits. Okay, red is sales, profits is blue. But it's not a great way to do it because every message is individual. So if I break it up into the two you see on the right, I can deliver the really important message I want. That over the last few years, what we've discovered is sales were going up, but profits were going down. So one of the things we've done is slow down how much we're pushing for sales so that we could stop losing sales. So between 2012 and 2013, we finally figured out exactly what we want to do. We put our energy in stabilizing profit margins, and we did it. I'm now glad to report, that would be my next slide, that in 2014 and 15, both sales went up and profits actually went up at a faster rate. Positioning. Again, don't focus on what your computer produces for you. It's your message. You produce what you want them to know. So you don't give the sales history by dumping an Excel spreadsheet. It's boring. It's numbers. Focus on the message. We've had the best sales year ever. We have a 20% CAGR, a cumulative aggregate annual growth rate is at 20%. Look how we keep growing on average each year. That's audience driven. I get my message made. Finally, understand that just like in a magazine or a newspaper, a title's important. It's extremely important in a slide too. No one reads the whole article. No one reads in a magazine or book anymore. They just skim it, knowing if it's really interesting, they continue to pay attention. Same goes for slides. So use something that's powerful that will involve the audience by posing a question, by giving a benefit, by getting to the final part. That way they're going to pay attention to everything. With that, you now know the three parts of focus, okay? Focus on the whole presentation, each section, and each slide. The second part is to remember that in doing that, you want to follow my adage, less is more. Now, when I grew up, there was a phrase, a picture's worth 1,000 words. That's not really true. People don't want to see a 1,000-word presentation, nor do they want to watch 30 boring PowerPoint slides. They want is what's important now and as short and concise as possible. So your job is to first figure out what you want to say and then remember less is more. So I don't take my entire speech, 10 pages worth of information, and either put it all on slides or just take the title line of each paragraph and put it in there as 5 bullets. I say, what's the key point I'm trying to make about how to help audiences understand? And it comes down to 5 issues. Use examples, repeat things, give statistics, comparisons, testimony, whatever the case may be, and I can explain it. These short phrases have a triple win effect. One is it's a lot less time to write it. 2, you are much less likely to have a typo when you do this. And obviously typos distract. And 3, you could focus now by being audience driven on what's the most important thing. I went once to a medical legal conference to do a presentation, and the question that I didn't know when I went in is, should I be focusing on the legal side of this thing? Because remember, I'm a lawyer too. Or should I be focusing on the science side of it? So I could ask the question, and then depending on what I did, I could either spend more time on statistics, or more time sharing precedent or testimony that was relevant. The same applies for numbers. Don't give numbers until you figure out what trend you're trying to make is. So here are exactly the same numbers, by the way, but shown in 2 different ways. On the left-hand side, if I want to show you how we did each quarter, I could make the point that, let's assume I'm Macy's, our sales are always better in the 4th quarter than everyone else, because if you look at the pink, you could see that they are higher. And what you can see, in fact, is we just finished 2013 with a very nice increase in our sales in the 4th quarter. Turns out a competitor of Macy's is sitting there, takes a look at the whole numbers, and instead of breaking it up by quarter, looks at annual sales and discovers the chart on the right. That in fact, what's happening, because they're doing so much worse in every other quarter minus the 4th, they're actually sold less in the final quarter. And so they came back and said, wow, we're doing great because we're growing and they're not. Again, use the charts that make the point you're trying to make. Again, don't focus on features, focus on the benefits. Why is it better, faster, or cheaper? Or as we try to do it, at presentation excellence make a hero out of you. Those are the clients that we focus on. How do we make you a hero? One of the greatest ways of showing the benefits or what less is more is focusing on logos and simple concepts. Think about it. I paid $35 to create the swoosh for Nike, and everyone knows that means high performance. You look at IBM and you know what they stand for. You look at Coca-Cola, an icon in the whole world, and you know what it stands for: refreshing, reinvigorating, things like that. Lexus, the kind of classic car it is, an upper scale car that's really well built and has almost no problems. The point is, a brand, just like anything else, communicates very effectively what is you need to know, and is less is more. Now, I deal with a lot of financial presentations, people selling funds, selling stocks, etc. VCs, PE firms, M&A. And one of the things that's usually done is the company will go, well, we have 27 portfolio companies in our current $100 million fund. And what we're looking to do is raise another $100 million for another set. We're going to probably go a little bit bigger this time, get 6 or 7 companies, and I want to go over what we do. And they go through the high-level issue for Vito, so he knows, the very important top officer, why this company's had a 27% IRR, internal rate of return, it's phenomenal, and why they should be invested in. But he doesn't really want to hear about all 27 companies. And people go, no, I got to present all the information and all the details. And the answer is, no, you don't, because that's clutter. They don't need to know that. In fact, in any large company, that's why you have people who work for Vito, and their job is to do other things, including see more. His job is to see more details. So we recommend what you do is, when you're dealing with that kind of situation, you create an audience-driven 20-minute high-end presentation from Vito showing the key points he needs to know, highly successful, tremendous rate of return, great strategists who figure out how to buy the right companies, very low turnaround. And then you provide the reference book for him to give Seymour. He can check each of the 27 companies to do it. Again, more work, but much more hit and much more power. Third part is to leverage graphics and visual metaphors. Again, what is very important to understand is we believe very strongly that the best way you're going to accomplish anything is to understand that you have to unify the brain, the left brain and the right brain. That which is dealing with words, that's which is dealing with pictures. If you're not dealing with both, you're basically running on 2 wheels instead of 4. You're not just dealing with people making decisions on logic, but on emotions. Actually, most people rationalize it on logic, but they actually use emotions to make the decision. And it's graphics that drive the emotions. So what you always want to do is start off by understanding, I'm not going to work on the tasks and the little technical details. I'm going to focus first on the vision. This is a great quote. I let you read it. Focus on getting people to yearn for the vast and endless sea. Then they're going to do whatever it takes to get there. That's how our philosophy has been at every one of the companies that I've started and run, and that's what makes it work and why people love coming to work, etc. That's what you need to do as a leader. And so that less is more starts off with choosing the place to go, inspiring the vision. Then you paint the story by using pictures, by using power words, quotes, statistics, metaphors. Martin Luther King did it so brilliantly. I have a dream. He repeats the same thing. He talks about the dream and the mountain and what the world's going to look like better. That's how you do it. That's how you inspire people. And that's how you ultimately persuade them to buy what you're looking for. And for those of you who don't want to spend time on the graphics, let me just remind you about an old classic study. 3M did this at Wharton. And what they did is they wanted to know whether or not people could really remember the same amount of information and have the same clout if they're using graphics or not graphics. And so they had a presentation, same presentation, presented to 2 groups, one with, one without visual aids. And they asked them 72 hours later, 3 days later, how much do you recall? Now try to remember something. Most people, when they see a presentation, don't immediately say, good, let's go spend $27 million on this deal. What they do is they bring it back, they talk to their team, and they have to re-communicate it to everybody. If they're going to do that, they need to remember as much about why this is a great offering, because they're presenting it to them. So this was a great test to see how much they remember. 72 hours later, what did they discover? People remember 5 times more information if they see the same message with visual aids and without. But even more persuasive was this statistic, that every presenter who used visual aids was rated consistently as better prepared, more professional, more credible, interesting, persuasive, etc. Now, one is just it's the aura. But the second part of it is that they're really a polished presenter or being polished. But the second part is and I can tell you this from experience, in preparing a presentation that uses both words and pictures, I spend an inordinate amount of time trying to find the right pictures that really symbolize what I'm trying to do. And therefore, by the time I finally get it together and I fine tune what pictures they are, I've actually got my message clearer. So I think that's the reason it also comes across that way. When you're doing a presentation, show the product. It is amazing how many presentations I go to that never really show the product. Show it in light, and make your point of what you're trying to do. This is a company that focuses on gift cards that have actually tripled the margin for many of the stores that are using them. Great number, great thing, but let people see where it is and how little space it has. If you have a concept, focus on the concept. Show it to them. So in this case, display that concept. This company came to us originally with 27 cities they're located in, and they said, here we are on 6 continents, 27 cities, here's our list. I said, who the hell cares where the list is? I want to know where the companies, your countries are. Where are you only in America, only in Europe? You're really on 6 continents? Show it to me. And so we did the stars and the circles. And then he said, no, we want the name. And as we all know, clients are always right, even when they're wrong. So we put in all the names here too. A little bit unnecessary cluttering from my point, but it doesn't matter. People got the message. This is a global organization. Sometimes you have to build your own organizational charts, your own diagrams that make your point. So this is a company that's addressing a $1 trillion industry and trying to show how different pieces fit together. And every time they acquire a new company, hire a new person, it's a different part of that red, green, or blue area, and they're able to pull it out. Everyone in that company knows exactly where it is. So it may not mean anything to you, but to them, this is kind of a guidance. This is the second slide that I mentioned. I told you there's 2 great slides. So this came from a client that I worked with, and there's no information on you to identify who they are, obviously, but it's a great point about what we're trying to make. You need to choose the right chart. So I want you all to take a look at this. And if you were in front of me, we'd go through this together. I'd say, where does your eye go? If you're like any of the other 99.9% of the people, your eye goes to that 51st week where the red and green both go up. That's what you're looking at. And so I said, what do you think the 51st week is? And they go, it's Christmas. And so I said, what does this tell you? It tells you you do your most sales at Christmas. Great point, right? That's not what the point of this slide is. The point of this slide is that they sell a product, and that if you start selling that product within 7 weeks of the end of the year, it can actually contribute as much as 40% of the sales, because most of this buying cycle for this product happens to take place before and into Christmas. And so the key is, if you're going to sell this product, you can go sell it in August and get great orders on it because it's a phenomenal product for that. This chart doesn't tell you that. And that was what was wrong with it. The irony is in this sales team, I had to diagnose all the stuff we went through it. 14 out of 15 people used this chart. Number 15 didn't use it. When I asked her why, she said, because I don't get the chart. It doesn't make any sense for my point. And it was very, very interesting. She's outselling everybody by over 50%. Again, clutter destroys power of a presentation. Use familiar concepts. Everything we ever learned, we learned in kindergarten. True story. So if you want to huff and puff and you can blow it down, then you want to build something that they can't blow down, as this company did with their infrastructure. Use icons that are familiar. Okay, don't drink and don't drive. If you need a graphic to make a point, make the point, okay? I don't think we always communicate the way other people get it. So she may care about the garbage. I don't think he's worrying about that right now. And no matter what you say in your body language may speak completely different to your words. So be aware of both. And sometimes you have to build your own metaphor. So we dealt a lot with people who talk about integrated solutions, but the problem we all know is when you integrate, they don't always work together well. They can produce something that's pretty ugly to look at. Okay? Well, people really want something holistic, but God would have put something together. And so our point is, when you build it, maybe you should try for holistic, not integrated. So now you know what to focus on, how to keep it short and simple and to the point, and how to use graphics to get the left and right parts of your brain working together. Now comes the hard part for you. You got to organize it. Remember, every presentation works differently. You might want to follow an industry standard. Again, that would make life easy. You might want to do it logically. So the box I've given you on the right is how a traditional sales presentation might be done. AIDA is one kind of model. You gain attention. Okay, then what you do is you identify their needs, and what you do is you show them that you can satisfy their needs. Now, for them to buy, they have to visualize the benefits. Hence, the benefits is the key thing. If they visualize it and they really want it, they'll take action. And so those might be the 5 sections of those presentations. You make it easy to follow. You might use the rule of 3. Tell them what you're going to tell them, especially in a long presentation. Give them the content. And then what you want to do is summarize it. I will do all of this in this presentation. And I will do the next part, use transitions between sections. So I have, if you notice, 5 sections. And what you've noticed, I have a cover slide transitioning each one. And if you've also noticed, because this is a very long presentation, I have those stars on the bottom, and they move across with the same color as the title of the slide to let people know if you've stepped out and you come back, where do you belong for what you're doing. And you end by giving away any takeout points you want to have them have, and you can even give them a handout, but don't give them the handout at the beginning because it conflicts with their paying attention to your message. Transitions can be easy, just word slides like I tend to use for this one to make it simple. They can be graphics. There are some presentations I do that have no words, just graphics, or you can use animation, whatever you think might be working. So if you think about every presentation as a sales presentation and you're organizing around doing it that way, these are the 5 key areas you want to focus on. Every sales presentation is to be client-centered, what I've called audience-driven. It has to be about what is that client really paying attention to. If you don't do that, the person knows right away you're not authentically interested in them, and it may be flying in all the directions beyond them. You analyze what their needs are. That shows you care about them and you understand them, and you explore alternative options. You recommend then, based on those options, what you consider the best value-added solution. That shows your expertise. Remember, that's why they're buying you. Then you offer them a compelling reason to choose you, when you're only going to serve one person in their industry. In other words, you might serve HP or IBM, but not both. Or almost 50, I have one company that's got something like 75 out of the Fortune 100 use their services. That's a compelling reason to use them. They're clearly a very great company. And then finally, close by asking for a commitment. Without a commitment, you don't get your sale. And it's ironic that 50% of all people don't do it. Let me kind of just run through this more quickly now. How do you demonstrate you understand the company? First, you have to go through the process. You have to do the research. Google, it's easier. Figure out what's in it for them if they do it. And then remember that companies don't buy, people buy. So what's in it for the buyer? We once did a presentation for a couple $100 million program to a company that was looking to do construction, and landscaping turned out to be issue. And we couldn't figure out why until we started looking at the background, and it turned out the vice chairman, who had never been in one of these presentations, was at this one, and he cared a lot about it. And then we realized 2 and 2, he was retiring. This was his legacy project. So we discovered that that's the person we should focus our energy on. We did, and we won. Recognize there are invisible forces. Nobody makes decisions usually on their own in large organizations. They have other people who are doing it. They're coming for the context. What you want to do is tap into that and learn how to use it. How do you get them involved? How do you give them information they can give? Then once you've got those pieces together, you want to guide decision making. As Jerome Frank said in 1935, he's a jurist here in New York City, he recognized that what people do is they rationalize their decision based on logic, but they make it based on an emotion. So what's the fear? What's the pain? What's the success they're looking at? Understand Kahneman's Nobel Prize in 1996 is that more important to us is that we avoid pain rather than gaining success. So it's the gain that comes second to avoiding pain. That's what you want to focus in on. Hence, in the 80s, when PCs were introduced, one of the reasons IBM owned PCs for many years during the 80s was because nobody goes wrong buying an IBM. So even though it was twice the price of Compaq, and eventually when Dell come in even more than that, people couldn't afford to buy them until people had enough confidence, because they had to know they could not make a mistake. And you don't go wrong with IBM because those companies were new. This was an established company. Then what you do is you analyze this, you show that you understood the problem. You've really analyzed all the different options. What's important about showing the different options is that you can then deal with ones you don't accept. So if a competitor of yours actually picks one that you haven't accepted, you're able to immediately inoculate themselves by saying that's not a good enough answer, and if that's why we're not choosing it. And then when they introduce it, you've already taken them out of the thing. You evaluate the merits, you tell them why it wasn't good enough, and then you recommend your preferred, and that's what you're going for. Sales will always tell you that it's about cost, but the reality of life is it isn't. It's always about value. And you need to just clearly frame on that. Not one of you goes out to the store and said, I'm going to go to the secondhand, the 2-day-old store to buy 2-day-old bread. You buy fresh bread. Most of you buy fresh clothing. Most of you buy a car that's generally new or in good shape if it's your, for a larger situation. Why? Because the value is there. People, I teach in China. I was amazed to see these 21-year-olds, over 60% of them in my class, all using Apple, which is as a mobile device. The iPhone was twice the cost of the next phone there, and they did it. Why? Because the value, it's brand. They want to show they're with it. Okay, so it's a perfect example of it. You need to remember where we want value. We want something that's affordable, that's priced correctly, but it has to be. And if you offer extra value, if you're an expert, with my presentations, my clients know after they've designed it, they have any questions, they want to rehearse it, they want to take a look at it, they can call me literally at any time and they can do it. And that's kind of the way our service goes. I'm working with a client right now working on an investment banking presentation. I've got version 41 from their banker. It's still terrible. And that's why he finally turned it over to me and says, these guys, great bankers, but they don't know presentations. Let me tell Jerry help. Again, if you've got a solution, show it, make it compelling. If it's really special, come up with a way of explaining it. So this is a company that goes through 1,000 potential investments to pick 2, and they needed to show why and how they do it differently. So we came up with this proprietary screening system of a way of showing how they go from 1,000 to the top 2, and generally, therefore, they're picking winners. Again, didn't exist till we made it up, but we made it up based on their actual work, and I knew it's there. You want to show through the case studies why you're an ideal partner. People know that I'm used to working 24/7. Brilliant Image, which is my predecessor company, worked 24/7 on people. We did slide presentations as fast as 4 hours using imaging. And so when they're a leader working with my Vistage group or a client on something else, I'm almost always available whenever I can be. Make them proud to be a client. Show them who your typical clients are, that you're working with large clients and they want to work with you. Remember, persuasion is a combination of logic and emotion. What you also want to do is finally leave with something that's performance oriented. Okay, what percentage of the people are going to win as a result of that? How do you want to be judged by? Offer some kind of guarantee. Every time you hear someone saying you can buy this, and if you don't like it in 30 days, you can turn in your money back, that's a guarantee. That builds confidence, and that's why they do this. So putting it all together again, you demonstrate your understanding of your client needs. Don't forget that stage. It's critical to showing you're authentically concerned. You assess the potential solutions. You're showing your expertise. You're making a value-added recommendation. You're demonstrating why you are so important. So buying on the web doesn't give you that, but that's why we do get people's giving ratings and stuff. Establish your credibility and expertise. And now they're going, I like everything you're doing and I get who you are. Present the terms and conditions, and then again, ask for the sale. With that, you're now almost ready to rock and roll. And here's what's real important to understand. Most presenters today are not just sole presenters like the pictures we started with in this presentation, but you're actually in a great sense of conductor. Because what you're doing is you're conducting the setting, you're conducting the message, you're conducting the people in the audience where they sit, etc. So it's a massive process of bringing people together. You still always have to remember you have to be audience driven. And you have to do that in any kind of presentation. So one of the things I get when I do even webinars where I don't get to see you face to face is I take a look at how many people are coming in. Are they sales? Are they marketing? Are they distributed? How can I present in a way that's going to deliver the best information? And I want to remind you that great conversations are really what presentations are about. It's not lecturing, it's a conversation. You want to use common public speaking rules. Remember, everyone's nervous. So don't worry if you forget something, because the answer is if it's important, they'll ask, and if not, you'll remember it, okay? Don't lose control of your presentation. Don't read a screen. People can read. It's insulting. And don't lose control to handouts. Okay? Maintain as much eye contact as you can with your audience, no matter whether it's 2 people or 1 person you're presenting to or 2,000. And finally, remember, confidence, and that's why you have to know your material well, generates confidence, and that produces success. People buy because of emotions. The key emotion is trust. They have to trust you. They have to believe you're authentic. They have to believe you're consistent and honest and competent and responsible. And those are the real issues you have to do. And I think that's why debates are really interesting, because people are trying to demonstrate their authenticity about something. People get across when they're not. And their consistency. And this should have came up in yesterday's presentation. You will also want to use persuasion tactics, so it's not just a compelling presentation, but how you present it to persuade people. It's a different dimension. These are 7 of the different techniques that can be used. I mentioned the last one, that loss aversion beats gain attainment, based on Kahneman's Nobel Prize winning research. Reciprocity, social proof. I can go over this again if you come to our workshops. We do workshops every quarter publicly, and we do individual ones for corporations at all times. We go into a little more depth on all these kinds of things. As I said, board presentations are very different. They're not status reports, as most people treat them. They're not there for rubber stamping decisions. What an insult to these high-end executives. What they are is advisors who want to help you make a wise decision. And when you offer a challenge that they can help you confront, they'll give you the greater respect because they understand you really know how to use them well. When you do a presentation, every audience is slightly different. Try to figure out what the strategic theme is so you can touch their points. Is it about the future? Is it about the present? Is it about the past? Can you create talent management out of this? How do you get the people to take charge of moving this message on their own so you're not always there, etc.? At all points, remember, we don't just buy the presentation, and we don't just buy the company presenting it, we actually buy the presenter. So you need to look at your brand, okay? Are you coming across as a leader? And that's where presentation skills training is so much important, because you can do a great presentation when you deal with people who say, oh, I'm going to teach you how to be a great actor. There are many improv experts out there, but they're not dealing with the message. If you just deal with the message and you're not dealing with your leader brand, you're not going to deliver it correctly. It's a combination of what you say and how you say it. And so you want to focus on those kind of qualities that reinforce that position. You want to facilitate the interaction very often by seeding questions that get you. One of the reasons I teach here in America and in China, is because it puts me in front of usually pretty demanding audiences that constantly focus on making me think, how do I get these people to really understand these issues better? So when I deal with my leaders, they get those information so I can test it as I do it. For many of you, you're going to present face-to-face. That's the easiest because you get all the body languages, okay? The big problem is when you're doing a webinar, when you're doing some kind of demo, you don't have face-to-face. You can't dress for success. You can't use body language and gestures. And you can't get eye contact to get any feedback. On the other hand, it's a great way to do it. Our record's 2,500 people at a presentation. People come from any place. That's why we do this internationally for clients and for associations, because it's a great way to reach people, and you have to make sure that you're following the ADAP rules so that people will want to pay attention. The key success trick that I'm going to teach you about webinars is just be a great presenter. It's really what it's all about. You have to understand that you have to just do everything you do better. So your thoughts have to be very clear. It has to be very well organized. Many of you have been listening to this presentation. We've got, just so you know, we've got almost 95% of all the people who first came on are still on. Okay, people stay for my presentations because I try to do that. I organize it, I make it simple, I keep it well paced so that there's something you're getting from it. You don't get distracted, because I do know I compete with the fact that it's 1 to 2 o'clock and people in New York area, that you're hungry, you're thirsty, whatever the case may be. That's why we give you that extra minute to get something there. Speak clearly. Okay, in my case, I've stopped 3-4 times during this presentation and drank something quickly because my throat gets dry. dry. I keep cough drops in every presentation training program I do in any kind of presentation. So if I don't have water, I can just keep my throat lubricated. Know about yourself. I started teaching this morning at 7:25 in the morning. So I've been doing this now already a long time. So I know that if I sit very comfortably in a seat with a back, I'm going to probably fall asleep just like everybody else. So I sit at the edge of my seat very uncomfortably, get up every once in a while. And the final part's to master the technology, to know what you're doing. We had tested everything, and I wanted to make sure that mic was really working because the signal wasn't coming in very clear whether it was working or not. How do you handle a difficult question? A very common question we get asked. Number one, stand control. It's really what it's about. People want to ask a question, they want an answer, but if you can't answer right away, no problem. Tell them, I can answer part A, but not part B and C. I'm going to get back to you. Make sure you give me a card so I can do that. And just do that. That does two things. It gives them the answer, but it also demonstrates your leader brand that you're going to deliver on the promise. The goal in a presentation is to hammer home your key points. You should go in again. What's the goal? What do you really want people to know? And those are the things you want to try to make sure in the questions you're answering on those points, because that's it. So always just be very humble, but knowledgeable and competent, and focus on providing them the value that you can provide them as they go. In sum, it all comes down to 5 key points. If you want to be a professional presenter, which is what I want you all to be, and that's why today we've started with this presentation, you need to know your stuff. You need to focus on what's really important to know and then organize it in a way that's going to facilitate comprehension. You're going to use attractive visuals that support, not duplicate what you say. You don't read it. You talk about it. You make it easy. Big types so people get the essence of it, or pictures, but you talk about it. It's why it's called an audio visual. They do both. They read, they hear, they listen. It's togetherness. You deliver this in an energetic, passionate, poised, confident, powerful, engaging manner. In other words, if you've got that energy, it's infectious. People stay with you. And finally, leverage the assets of the setting. So I've worked with people who present at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in a big audience right after a nice heavy meal that everybody sat in. And the stage where they're working from is about 200 feet, 200, 200 miles, it feels like sometimes, away from where everybody's sitting still at their lunch tables. How do you get them involved? It's that kind of psychology that has to be used in advance to make sure that you've leveraged it to do it. Case like that, by the way, get off the podium and walk the floor. Talk to people as you're doing it. The final part that I leave you with sums it all up. How can you be audience driven and how can you be authentic? It's your story. And remember, you really care about your story. And if you show your passion that you're enjoying the story, they will want to know more about it. That's why they stick with you to hear it. So enjoy telling your story. If you follow our advice, you will be a hero. I've been doing this now for a lot of years, over 5,000 clients we've worked with all over the place. And it's the one thing that I do is I made you a hero. Every one of my clients knows one of my rules. If I help you on a presentation, you have to call me within 24 hours and tell me if it worked the way we think it did. Because remember, I'm always shooting from the hip. I'm using the best experience I've got, but I could be wrong. Thank God I'm almost right almost all the time. But the point is, I want to make you a hero. So if you give me the feedback, I can do it, and I can help you get that next bigger presentation and the next bigger presentation. That's our goal, to make you a hero. And with that, I want to thank you for attending today's presentation. I hope you learned a lot about ADAP and presentation excellence. If you're interested in attending one of our workshops, our next public one's again in New York City. I think it's December 1st. We wanted to get everyone up and running on presentations before the end of the year so they can have a really dynamite 2016. Again, if you haven't seen our program, it's unique. It's a 4-week program that rolls around one central day that we meet in between. So you have 2 weeks to get stuff in the beginning of the presentation to us, 2 weeks afterwards to show that you've learned things. We use exactly the same program on our corporate training programs. January is a very big month for us to do corporate training programs around the country because people are getting their salespeople together to look at last year and plan for the future, etc. Again, I'm reminding you there are 9 more webinars that you can attend. You should try to attend some of them or share with other people in your organizations that you're involved with this, because it's going to help them with business development, with sales, with marketing, leadership. Cybersecurity is one of our new ones that we're doing. It's really important. We just recently got hacked and we had to solve that problem in the last 3 days. Strategy, etc. So that's really it. If you've got any questions, I've got about 5 minutes left over to try to answer your questions. You have my email there, Jerry Conn at presentationexcellence.com, or you can always send it to me at jerryconn at presentationexcellencegroup.com. includes all of our other subsidiaries that provide different related services. We're glad to help you. Is there any questions? Here's the first question. So how much time should I plan? Great question. How much time should I plan to put into a presentation? So the first answer is you need to plan enough time that you feel confident about the knowledge, and then enough to do the practice and rehearsals. I'm really amazed sometimes people will tell me this is a very important presentation. This could actually be the biggest sale I'm going to do this year, or one of the two biggest sales I'm going to do this year. And I'm going to have someone else basically do the rough structure, and I'm going to practice it for a total of about half an hour to an hour. I'm going, it's so important, and that's what you're going to do? That doesn't make any sense. You need to understand it's a return on your investment. The investment is if you design a really great presentation, so the material is powerfully presented, it's compelling. Are you organizing in a way that makes it easy to people to get and absorb? And then are you personally passionate that you're going to provide the information in a way that's persuasive, so it's both compelling as a presentation and persuasive as a person, so that people buy it? And that takes time, and you need to find what works for you. For some people, they practice in front of mirrors. I have a lot of my clients are in bathrooms and in other rooms in hotels practicing when you're doing it there. For me, I like to walk when I practice, so I actually walk. I set up my life so I can walk to work and from work and practice different parts of the presentation there, so that I can always kind of visualize it, and I actually look at the different people as I'm walking and thinking, okay, you're in the audience, what are you doing? What question are you asking? However you do it, put enough time in to do it. Where do you get graphics? Today, first of all, you can always go to a number like iStock Photo, companies that provide them. They have copyrights on it. You have to pay for them. If you ever use someone else's, make sure you're following through the legalities and getting a using a trademark thing. Make sure we're copyrighted line, but trademarked copyright on an image rather, that you've gotten legal authority to use it. If you're taking any that aren't, then that's a great place to do it. You get them from Google and Yahoo, etc. I do recommend highly, whether if you're visual, do it yourself. If not, let someone else do it. But let someone help you pick the right images, because there's a real difference in the quality of the images in terms of what you're presenting and how you're doing it, and then put it together. If you work in a department, we, for example, many years ago to one of the biggest investment banks here in New York, and we actually took their one shift graphics department, and to help them scale their capability of serving everybody, emerging markets, debt, stock, they're international. We changed it into a 3 around the clock program, 3 different shifts, etc. If you're in that kind of situation, dedicate somebody's job, part of it at least, to be able to collect great images and put them into file systems so that you can pull them out. So this way, when an analyst or a specific banker needs to quickly create a presentation and they need to change an image, it's real easy to find the right image. They don't have to hunt, because they can find something that's dealing with different currencies, different debt, different situations, and things like that. So learning how to create templates and storing great data makes life a lot easier. That's what we did, actually. We were honored that at the end, the guy's name was Marty. I still remember Marty calling me and saying, I just want you to know we had a 25% increase in sales this year, and you can take some of the credit for it. And that's what it's about. Okay, with that, I'm going to stop. There's one or two other questions to those people I didn't answer right now. I'm going to follow up with afterwards, if it's all right with you, because I know who you are. Thank you for attending. Again, I look forward to seeing you next week. I'm not the presenter. I'm just the host, so I will be with you for the entire series as the host, but not the presenter. Again, we want to thank you and wish you